Chapter 10. For I believe that I shall prove that the organs which have to do with the disposal of the nutriment, as also their faculties, exist for the sake of this nutritive faculty. For since the action of this faculty is assimilation, and it is impossible for anything to be assimilated by, and to change into anything else unless they already possess a certain community and affinity in their qualities. Therefore, in the first place, any animal cannot naturally derive nourishment from any kind of food, and secondly, even in the case of those from which it can do so, it cannot do this at once. Therefore, by reason of this law, every animal needs several organs for altering the nutriment. For in order that the yellow may become red, and the red yellow, one simple process of alteration is required, but in order that the white may become black, and the black white, all the intermediate stages are needed. So also a thing which is very soft cannot all at once become very hard, nor vice versa, nor similarly can anything which has a very bad smell suddenly become quite fragrant, nor again can the converse happen. How then could blood ever turn into bone without having first become, as far as possible, thickened and white? And how could bread turn into blood without having gradually parted with its whiteness and gradually acquired redness? Thus it is quite easy for blood to become flesh, for if nature thicken it to such an extent that it acquires a certain consistency and ceases to be fluid, it thus becomes original newly formed flesh. But in order that blood may turn into bone, much time is needed and much elaboration and transformation of the blood. Further, it is quite clear that bread, and more particularly lettuce, beet, and the like, require a great deal of alteration in order to become blood. This then is one reason why there are so many organs concerned in the alteration of food. A second reason is the nature of the superfluities. For as we are unable to draw any nourishment from grass, although this is possible for cattle, similarly we can derive nourishment from radishes, albeit not to the same extent as from meat, for almost the whole of the latter is mastered by our natures. It is transformed and altered and constituted useful blood. But in the radish, what is appropriate and able of being altered, and that only with difficulty and with much labor, is the very smallest part. Almost the whole of it is surplus matter, and passes through the digestive organs, only a very little being taken up into the veins as blood, nor is this itself entirely utilizable blood. Nature, therefore, had need of a second process of separation for the superfluities in the veins. Moreover, these superfluities need, on the one hand, certain fresh roots to conduct them to the outlets, so that they may not spoil the useful substances, and they also need certain reservoirs, as it were, in which they are collected till they reach a sufficient quantity and are then discharged. Thus then you have discovered bodily parts of a second kind, consecrated in this case to the removal of the superfluities of the food. There is, however, also a third kind, for carrying the pabulum in every direction. These are like a number of roads intersecting the whole body. Thus there is one entrance that through the mouth for all the various articles of food. What receives nourishment, however, is not one single part, but a great many parts, and these widely separated. Do not be surprised, therefore, at the abundance of organs which nature has created for the purpose of nutrition. For those of them which have to do with alteration prepare the nutriment suitable for each part. Others separate out the superfluities. Some pass these along, others store them up, others excrete them. Some, again, are paths for the transit in all directions of the utilizable juices. So, if you wish to gain a thorough acquaintance with all the faculties of nature, you will have to consider each one of these organs. Now, in giving an account of these, we must begin with those effects of nature, together with their corresponding parts and faculties, which are closely connected with the purpose to be achieved. Chapter 11. Let us once more, then, recall the actual purpose for which nature has constructed all these parts. Its name, as previously stated, is nutrition, and the definition corresponding to the name is an assimilation of that which nourishes to that which receives nourishments. And in order that this may come about, we must assume a preliminary process of adhesion, and for that, again, one of presentation. For whenever the juice which is destined to nourish any of the parts of the animal is emitted from the vessels, It is in the first place dispersed all through this part. Next it is presented, and next it adheres, and becomes completely assimilated. The so-called white leprosy shows the difference between assimilation and adhesion, in the same way that the kind of dropsy, which some people call anasaka, clearly distinguishes presentation from adhesion. For, of course, the genesis of such a dropsy does not come about, as do some of the conditions of atrophy and wasting, from an insufficient supply of moisture. The flesh is obviously moist enough. In fact, it is thoroughly saturated, and each of the solid parts of the body is in a similar condition. While, however, the nutriment conveyed to the part does undergo presentation, it is still too watery and is not properly transformed into a juice. Nor has it acquired that viscous and agglutinative quality which results from the operation of innate heat. Therefore, adhesion cannot come about, since, owing to this abundance of thin, crude liquid, the pebulum runs off and easily slips away from the solid parts of the body. In white leprosy, again, there is adhesion of the nutriment, but no real assimilation. From this, it is clear that what I have just said is correct, namely, that in that part which is to be nourished there must first occur presentation, next adhesion, and finally assimilation proper. Strictly speaking, then, nutriment is that which is actually nourishing, while the quasi-nutriment, which is not yet nourishing, e.g. matter which is undergoing adhesion or presentation, is not, strictly speaking, nutriment, but is so called only by an equivocation. Also, that which is still contained in the veins, and still more, that which is in the stomach, from the fact that it is destined to nourish, if properly elaborated, has been called nutriment. Similarly, we call the various kinds of food nutriment, not because they are already nourishing the animal, nor because they exist in the same state as the material which actually is nourishing it, but because they are able and destined to nourish it if they be properly elaborated. This was also what Hippocrates said, nutriment is what is engaged in nourishing, as also is quasi-nutriment, and what is destined to be nutriment. For to that which is already being assimilated, he gave the name of nutriment, to the similar material which is being presented or becoming adherent, the name of quasi-nutriment, and to everything else that is contained in the stomach and veins, the name of destined nutriment. Chapter 12. It is quite clear, therefore, that nutrition must necessarily be a process of assimilation of that which is nourishing to that which is being nourished. Some, however, say that this assimilation does not occur in reality, but is merely apparent. These are the people who think that nature is not artistic, that she does not show forethought for the animal's welfare, and that she has absolutely no native powers whereby she alters some substances, attracts others, and discharges others. Now, speaking generally, there have arisen the following two sects in medicine and philosophy among those who have made any definite pronouncement regarding nature. I speak, of course, of such of them as know what they are talking about, and who realize the logical sequence of their hypotheses and stand by them. As for those who cannot understand even this, but who simply talk any nonsense that comes to their tongues, and who do not remain definitely attached either to one sect or the other, such people are not even worth mentioning. What, then, are these sects, and what are the logical consequences of their hypotheses? The one class supposes that all substance which is subject to genesis and destruction is at once continuous and susceptible of alteration. The other school assumes substance to be unchangeable, unalterable, and subdivided into fine particles, which are separated from one another by empty spaces. All people, therefore, who can appreciate the logical sequence of an hypothesis hold that, according to the second teaching, there does not exist any substance or faculty peculiar either to nature or to soul, but that these result from the way in which the primary corpuscles, which are unaffected by change, come together. According to the first-mentioned teaching, on the other hand, nature is not posterior to the corpuscles, but is a long way prior to them and older than they, and therefore, in their view, it is nature which puts together the bodies both of plants and animals. And this she does by virtue of certain faculties which she possesses, these being, on the one hand, attractive and assimilative of what is appropriate, and on the other, expulsive of what is foreign. Further, she skillfully molds everything during the stage of genesis, and she also provides for the creatures after birth, employing here other faculties again, namely one of affection and forethought for offspring, and one of sociability and friendship for kindred. According to the other school, none of these things exist in the natures of living things, nor is there in the soul any original innate idea, whether of agreement or difference, of separation or synthesis, of justice or injustice, of the beautiful or ugly. All such things, they say, arise in us from sensation and through sensation, and animals are steered by certain images and memories. Some of these people have even expressly declared that the soul possesses no reasoning faculty, but that we are led like cattle by the impression of our senses and are unable to refuse or dissent from anything. In their view, obviously, courage, wisdom, temperance, and self-control are all mere nonsense. We do not love either each other or our offspring, nor do the gods care anything for us. This school also despises dreams, birds, omens, and the whole of astrology, subjects with which we've dealt at greater length in another work, in which we discuss the views of Asclepiades, the physician. Those who wish to do so may familiarize themselves with these arguments, and they may also consider at this point which of the two roads lying before us is the better one to take. Hippocrates took the first mentioned. According to this teaching, substance is one and is subject to alteration. There is a consensus in the movements of air and fluid throughout the whole body. Nature acts throughout in an artistic and equitable manner, having certain faculties, by virtue of which each part of the body draws to itself the juice which is proper to it, and, having done so, attaches it to every portion of itself and completely assimilates it, while such part of the juice as has not been mastered and is not capable of undergoing complete alteration and being assimilated to the part which is being nourished, is got rid of by yet another and expulsive faculty.